Welcome to the Travelman Podcast. My name is Ben, and I'll be your travel buddy. On today's episode, I have a fantastic guest. His name is Joel, and I met him in DTLA last year. He's actually a theatre critic for the OC Weekly that's based out there in Orange County. We met while eating some delicious food at Grand Central Market. I think the place was called Prawn Coastal. He was drinking a beer, I was drinking a beer, and as all Californians go, they're welcoming and friendly and nice to chat to. So sit back and hear Joel's reasoning and logic behind leaving the great state of Hawaii to last and how he managed to conquer all 50 states of America. So, just want to let you know there'll be a language warning on this episode as Joel swears like a trooper, so please take that into account. Okay, thank you. So, Joel, thank you very much for joining me on my podcast. Do you still remember me?
Yeah, it was in Los Angeles. We were at the, what the hell is it called? Grand Central Market or something like that?
Yeah, that's it.
And I think I had just gotten back from Hawaii and...
Yeah, no, you were about to go.
Oh, I was about to go.
Yeah, you told me you had done 49 states of the 50.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. This would have been last year, this month. Actually, a year ago this month.
Yes.
Earlier this month.
Yes.
And I'm a sucker for exotic men with wonderful accents, so of course I had to strike up a conversation with you. And that's... Here we are.
Have I got an exotic accent?
Well, I wouldn't say exotic.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like New Zealandish.
No.
Has anybody ever told you that?
No.
No, I kind of pride myself. I was a bartender for a number of years, and I like to think that I can pick people's accents out and even dialects from within a country. But no, I mean, I don't know how many English people I've called Australian, and that pisses them off. I don't know how many Aussies I've called New Zealanders, that pisses them off. So I kind of stopped.
Very funny. Yeah, no, it's very easy to piss off an Aussie, you call them a New Zealander, or vice versa. That's just like pissing off an American. You call them a Canadian when they're really from the States, so they don't like that, do they? Or vice versa.
I don't think most Americans know where Canada is, to tell you the truth.
Canada's north. If any Americans are listening to us now, which they are, because I know I've got a bit of a following in the US. If you're wondering, Canada is north, but it's also between another state of America, which is Alaska, which you've been to, haven't you?
I have been to Mexico.
Mexico, that's another state of America, Mexico.
And I'm also one of those rare Americans who actually does know where Canada is because I am first generation. My dad was born in Toronto.
Ah, that's why you've got an accent.
Do I have an accent?
Yeah, I always thought you were Canadian.
I thought that was because I am an international man of mystery and have to cloak my identity wherever I go. But
you're Austin Powers.
Not quite as groovy.
Not quite as groovy. Well, talking about the 50 states that you've seen, how long did it actually take you to do all 50 states? Or how long have you been visiting states for? Well, actually, let me rephrase that. When was the first state that you visited? Like what year? Do you remember? Or
no, because it had to have been Nevada, I guess, because my parents used to go there.
Okay.
At the best time of the year, in the middle of the fucking summer, when it was 110 degrees.
Yeah.
And this would have been the late 70s when there was nothing in Las Vegas for kids or families to do. Got a couple of casinos had arcades. Nowadays, obviously there's entire resorts that are family friendly and all that. I guess there was Circus, but that always had this air of creepy clown sexual predator to it, I guess. But anyway, it must have been Vegas. But I think the first real excursion was a road trip with my family, my mom, dad, and my niece.
Yeah.
And we drove from Southern California to Toronto and back. Wow. So that was really my first, almost took off probably a third of the states right there. And that was when I was in sixth grade. So I would say from sixth grade till last year, which would have been about 41 years,
Yeah, wow.
give or take.
Well, how old are you? Are you in your mid-40s?
Oh, I interviewed Cloris Leachman once. Do you know that actress?
What's her name again?
Cloris Leachman. She was on a sitcom on American TV for years, I think called Phyllis. It was a spinoff of Mary Tyler Moore.
Okay.
Anyway, I think she won an Academy Award for the Last Picture Show.
Okay.
Anyhow, she was doing a play, and I was interviewing her, and I asked her how old she was, and she told me something I will never forget. A gentleman never asks a lady how old she is. So, since, no, I'm 52.
You're 52. I thought you were in your mid-40s for some reason.
No, that's all my healthy living.
It's all the healthy living. No cigarettes and no booze.
Well, I would not say the latter is true, although I prefer beer.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's technically considered booze.
Yeah, beer is definitely booze. That's an alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, and it is my last name, so I've been trying to live up to it for most of my adult life. That's for sure.
That's true. You are a beers. Can you tell me one great thing that you did in each state, or at least actually tell me the 3 best things you've ever done? So how about that?
Well, I survived them all, so that's an achievement.
That's good.
3 great. So you want 3 things, 3 memorable things from my 3 favorite states.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm not going to include California.
Okay.
Because while I think that's the most interesting state for scenery,
yep,
and hands down, I think the most beautiful state. Although there are other states that definitely have.
I love California.
Just pure variety. It's also a terribly ugly, soul debilitating state as well, with all the traffic and all that. But
true. Yeah.
Let's see. I would say New York, the city of.
Yeah.
I did a solo road trip, cross-country road trip when I was it was 1994.
Yeah. And
I had intended to hit as many Major League Baseball stadiums as I could, because I'm a huge baseball fan.
Oh, cool.
And I had set it up that I was going to see about eight or nine stadiums. And I shit you not, the morning I took off, it's 1994, it would have been maybe June.
Yeah.
And
nice and cold. Oh, wait, warm.
What's that?
It was warm in June, yeah?
Well, yeah, but it's 4 a.m, so it's still a little brisk. And I was heading out, and on the radio it said Major League Baseball players have announced a strike, and they didn't play the rest of the fucking year, so I never got a chance to see any of the stadiums. Yeah.
I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine from the Netherlands, Johan Vogel, if you're listening.
Yeah.
I think he's in Cuba now.
You can tell him
until
you're on.
Yeah, until Denver, and then I was on my own, except for a brief stop in Missouri where my parents lived, and had a friend in New York and Boston. But anyway, so I wind up going to New York, and I had my guitar.
Yeah.
At the time, I was I'd written a few songs, and it wasn't any good.
Yeah.
But I played an open mic in a basement bar in Columbia University where Jack Kerouac used to hang out, and so I always he was a big influence, even though it's kind of cliche.
Yeah.
That's not writing, that's typing, as Truman Capote said. That book kind of lit a fire in me for sure. And so that was a high point. Let's see. I would probably say Montana. Visiting Glacier.
Oh, yeah.
Glacier National Park.
Yep.
This beautiful park that has this amazing drive. I think it's called the End of the Sky Drive. But what made it really memorable is that I have a friend, a really good friend, one of my oldest friends, and we hate each other. We do road trips a lot, and we are just at each other's throats. We both know how to, press each other's buttons.
Yeah. And
it is an endless variety of fun. And anyway, he was hell-bent on hiking in Glacier National Park. Just had to hike. And I was like, we've been driving from California, and I was kind of beat. But first, we get into the park, and without him even kind of looking at a map or anything, he goes, "Well, here's a hike. Here's a trail. I'm going to take this hike." I'm like, "All right." And there's fucking signs everywhere, grizzly bears sighting, blah blah blah. And we're walking down this path for I don't know how long. It was probably only about 15 minutes, but it felt like 3 hours. And just trees everywhere. There's no you can't see through them. Really narrow. And I'm starting to freak out a little bit, and he's just tromping on it ahead. And so I just say, "Hey, I am not going to do this hike. I'm going to go back and sit by a river or whatever.
Yeah.
So I go back. He winds up doing the hike. It never got any better. So I got a kick out of that.
Oh,
But the park itself is just amazing. I mean, probably the most amazing national park I've been to, and I've been to a few of them.
Yeah.
So a third state. It have to be Arizona. The first time I went to Canyon de Chelly, which is a canyon in northeast Arizona in the Four Corners area.
Okay. Is that near the Grand Canyon? Or
they call it the miniature Grand Canyon, although I've only been to the Grand Canyon once and I hated it because it was so crowded.
Yeah, fair enough.
But Canyon de Chelly it's still holy to the or sacred to the Navajos, and there's a cylindrical, just a long bony rock, I guess, in the middle of it, Spider Rock in Navajo mythology. That is where the spider goddess who taught the Navajos how to weave lives.
And the Navajos are Native Americans, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is where I want my ashes scattered, preferably later as opposed to sooner. But that's just a gorgeous place, and it's not heavily trafficked like the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
And you can actually even hike down to the bottom, although I have yet to do that. But I've been back several times. But yeah, that's a favorite place of mine for sure.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. I'd love to get out to that part of America. I've only really done the East Coast and West Coast and Florida, so I have to do all that in internal part of America. That sounds really cool.
I should also mention Kansas, which is my least favorite state because it is so flat. And twice I have been driving through Kansas and had anxiety attacks. Yeah. And I think the anxiety attacks have come because it is so flat, and I do not like that state.
Yeah. No, Kansas has all the tornadoes and twisters, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's in Tornado Alley, I believe. It also has one of the greatest scenic outlooks. I think it's Kansas. Yeah, pretty sure. And the scenic outlook basically overlooks this enormous slaughterhouse, basically.
Slaughterhouse of animals or something?
Of cows, yeah.
Wow.
Where they're killed and then shipped up to Chicago and whatnot. And anyway, that's the scenic outlook in Kansas.
Sounds lovely. Talking about cows, actually, what state has the best food?
Well, it's funny you mention that. It's also funny that your next guest, the guy that created Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh yeah, he'll be a guest at some stage. Yeah.
Yeah, he may be the polar opposite. He may be the polar opposite of me because I'm a writer and I've written plays, but I have no ambition, so I'm a nobody.
No,
but he also probably has a lot of money and he gets to travel around the world.
He does,
kind of like an Anthony Bourdain thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do not like to eat. I eat because I have to.
Ooh.
And so as far and I understand the importance and the significance of food. It can help you understand a culture as much as anything else. But
absolutely.
So to me, I am my friend Patrick, who I also travel with quite a bit, calls me the cyborg because I can live off beer, chewing tobacco, and Slim Jims. Okay. For a road trip. Not the healthiest of things, I realize that, but yeah. So asking me what the best food, I would think anywhere on one of the coasts. Yeah, and I hear New Orleans food is great, but New Orleans is weird for me because it's so humid and there's so much alcohol and the food is so rich that I would probably die if I stayed 2 weeks in New Orleans. But I know that, and since the storm, as they call it, Hurricane Katrina, it was always known for its food, but a lot of chefs from all over the country have kind of, or they were a few years ago, kind of opening up restaurants there as well. So that would be, let's just say New Orleans or Louisiana has the best food, and I do like the Cajun food and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and Creole cooking, I think, as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I tried some Creole and Cajun food in Miami. That was pretty nice.
Yeah, New Orleans is a trip. It's a city unlike any other in the United States.
Yeah,
very unique.
Is that one of your favorite cities, do you think?
Well, I probably should have mentioned that as a highlight because the first time I rolled into New Orleans was on that trip in 1994, and I parked across the river and I don't even remember how I got into New Orleans, but I'm literally walking somewhere near the French Quarter, and this parade I'm engulfed in this parade. Okay. And it's like the greatest thing. Was it a gay
parade?
It was just, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I just thought, wow, this must happen like on the hour, every hour. New Orleans is great. And there's homeless people doing home stands, holding plastic cups of beer, and it was just, it was awesome.
That's cool.
And then I later realized it was Halloween, and it was one of the planned parades. At the time, it was Halloween season, but yeah, I don't know how I got off that track, but anyway.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with New Orleans the first time. Most people do, and every trip since, and I have a couple of really good friends that have lived and live there. I've liked it less and less because it's, it's kind of at the terminus of the Mississippi River, and it's a bit grungy. It's a bit grungy. It's always been a bit decrepit. The storm just wiped out, huge swaths of areas, and some still haven't recovered. And it's even though I've never actually experienced any kind of crime or violence on any of my trips, it is known as a pretty high crime area, and it's a little sketchy. But I just went back in December, took a road trip with my buddy Steve.
Oh, cool.
Who lives there. And he lives in a neighborhood called the Bywater, which is a bit off the beaten track. It's, within walking distance of the quarter, maybe 20 minutes or half hour or so.
Yeah.
But I really like that. So my love affair has been rekindled in New Orleans.
What's a Bywater?
Bywater is just a neighborhood, and I think the name. I usually have to know as much as I possibly can about the places I'm in.
Yeah.
And because I'm one of those rare people that have Google, I can find all this information. And I think it was named Bywater because it literally was
by the water.
By the water.
Yeah, right.
By the river.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of been a not really on the must do list for years, but it's struck a fairly palatable balance, I think, between being authentic in terms of not gentrified, but there's just enough gentrification that it hasn't taken over, So I really like that.
Do you think gentrification would be good for New Orleans?
I don't think gentrification is good for anywhere, especially when you have people moving in that are a bit younger that have money.
And they're pushing other people out, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, there was a terrible situation in a part of LA, I think East LA, that is kind of gentrifying. And this young couple had moved in, and the guy was basically screaming at one of the street vendors, who was Latino. I think the guy screaming at him was Latino as well, so I don't think it was a ethnic or a racial thing at all. But he was just like, screaming at him to get his piece of shit cart off the sidewalk, and that to me is like the height of arrogance. I think you should be,
Absolutely.
even if you live in the neighborhood, you're a newbie. But yeah, I think. Gentrification is great if you have the money, but when you are kicking people out when the rents go up, and it loses its sense of culture, identity, and that, I think that is a problem for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, that's not very great.
But I have lots of opinions about everything, but I don't know a goddamn thing. So
yeah, no, that's okay. That's like me. I talk about travel, but I don't know anything about it. I'm more the face behind the microphone. Yeah, no, people. Yeah. Anyway, talking about beers, because your surname is Beer. What state has the best beer? And is that beer a mass marketed beer, or is that beer craft beer?
Well, again, I should probably write a book called The Grumpy Traveler.
Yeah, I would read it. Absolutely.
I don't really, food doesn't really kind of get me going. And I realized about 10 years ago that I was becoming like my dad. I didn't like going to restaurants. I like cheap beer, and I want to have sex with my mother. All right, maybe not the last one.
Nice.
So the craft beer revolution or whatever is kind of lost on me. I prefer the Mexican lagers, Modelo, Dos Equis, a Stella now and again. But again, as far as the craft beer, it was Colorado and California are in a rivalry of sorts. Who is the what was the state that was the first? And I don't know, but it seems like most of the beers that are really popular among a lot of people I know either come from Colorado or California. So I would say one of those two. But I'm sure any craft beer aficionados are probably tearing out their hair right now. No, it's Wisconsin. It's this and that. I think the greatest.
It's New York.
The greatest place I've ever consumed beer though was Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Because I had a couple of friends that I had actually met on Facebook, and I hooked up with them when I was there. And Madison is it's a college town. It's where the University of Wisconsin is. Okay. And I swear, although I was obviously a little buzzed, one entire building is just one huge bar. It seemed like it, but
really,
yeah, they well, cold winters and long interminable winters, and they drink quite a bit. And
I think you were buzzed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No one building would hold that much beer. Do you know how much beer you drunk? Did you drink them out of beer?
19 beers? No, I don't know. I think a lot of it had to do with I've been driving a lot and, kind of tired or whatever. But it's interesting. There's a lot of beers in the U.S., especially the Western United States, that have been around forever. Yeah. Schlitz in Milwaukee, Milwaukee's Best, Old Milwaukee. Yeah. Catching the theme. In Washington, there's Olympia, there's Rainier. Most of those beers have actually been bought by, I think, the company that owns Miller Lite, and they're brewed in Urbandale, which is a city right outside of Los Angeles. And they're brewed there now and then shipped back up to the States and up to the States where they were originated. And people go up there, and they're not great beers. They're kind of cheap, but they have that local connection. So people are buying these local beers, trying to get a taste of something local and authentic when it's actually brewed out of state. I always got a kick out of that.
Yeah, I tell you, a really crap cheap beer is Budweiser.
Budweiser?
Yeah.
Well, I used to really like Foster's until everybody that was from Australia said we don't drink that there. Yeah, do they not drink Foster's?
No. Yeah. No. Well, you can find it in some shops, but we don't. We brew it for for export, not for our own benefit. We don't drink that stuff. That's crap. I
know the Budweiser in Europe has a higher alcohol content than in America.
That's a real Budweiser. That's Budjevica, it's called, from Czech Republic. And then the Americans stole the name, something like that.
You Americans don't steal anything. We create everything.
Ewan, so what do you think of Donald Trump? No. You love the Don, don't you?
I actually interviewed him. He bought a golf course in Palos Verdes, which is a really high-end affluent community on the coast, LA County. And he bought a golf course called Ocean Trails. And I was working for a golf magazine at the time, Southland Golf, kind of a regional publication. Cool. And we just got a press release or a notification. Donald Trump will be on course if you want to interview him. So I showed up with the two editors of the magazine, and we were thinking it was going to be a press conference of sorts. And it was just us and Donald. And this was in 2005, so his presidential... he may have squawked about running for president, but...
his campaign hadn't started yet.
Yeah, and he wasn't serious about it, although whether he was ever serious about it, I don't know. I think he was the most surprised person in the world that he actually won the presidency. But anyway, so he drove us around his golf course for about 45 minutes, and he was funny, charismatic, and completely full of shit, because every question, because I was the one doing the questions, and he would turn every question, no matter what it was, to end with what his theme, what he wanted the takeaway to be, which is, this is the best golf course on the West Coast, even better than Pebble Beach, which is a complete and utter falsehood. I mean, it's not even close. Yeah. It's a course that was squeezed on land, and the holes are gimmicky. Even though it was designed by a really legendary golf course designer, Pete Dye, but even he thinks is a kind of a piece of shit.
That's got a good name though. That golf course, it's very well known, Pebble Beach.
No, Pebble Beach, yeah. I mean, that's a marquee course, but Trump National Los Angeles, which Trump renamed,
is that the one you're saying that's all squeezed?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
I mean, it is on the ocean. I mean, beautiful views. You can't, but Yeah, in fact, that course has really lost a lot of business since he was president. I think the only way they're making money is on weddings and banquets. But I mean, it's a beautiful facility, but it's not a great golf course by any stretch. So
it sounds like he gentrified the golf course.
Yeah, he wanted to tear down a bunch of trees, and there's been a lot of lawsuits between him and the city and the county, and it's just typical Trumpism.
Typical Trumpism. Do you think he'll be reelected?
I think he will, for a couple of reasons. It's really, really difficult for a incumbent president to not win re-election. I think the last one was Bush Jr.
Yeah.
And I think the Democrats are still really fucked up. I mean, you've got, 98 people who've thrown their hat into the ring, and, you got Joe Biden, who's apparently the front runner at the moment, and he's kind of an establishment candidate, and I think there's going to be a big split between the progressives and the more traditional Democrats, and I think it's kind of going to be a repeat. But you never know.
What about the old
Trump
guy?
won because what's that?
What about the old guy? Isn't he going to run again? I forgot his
Biden.
name.
Oh, and Bernie Sanders.
Someone older. Yeah, Bernie.
I think it's Joe Biden, who was Obama's vice president. But you never know. I mean, Trump won because he got 80,000 more votes in 3 states. My instinct is he will win re-election.
So the 3 states that Trump won, getting back to this whole 50 states that you've traveled to, those 3 states you've obviously been to, are they pretty crappy states considering the people that voted for Trump? Or is that
from what I remember, they were Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And he won just enough. If you added up the margin of victory in those 3 states, it was 80,000 votes. Because obviously he lost the popular vote by a wide margin to Hillary. But you could fit the people that got Trump that election in the LA Coliseum. Just 80,000 people. And Ohio's a really big state. And it's always a swing state, and it's not so much. But I really like Wisconsin. And, Pennsylvania is a fine state. So, but it was rural voters, I think, more than anything else. Yeah.
Do you like that state?
Pennsylvania? Yeah, because it's got a little bit of everything. On the west side, it's a bit rural, but then you've got the big cities like Philadelphia to the east, and obviously a lot of history and all that.
Yeah.
A lot of Amish.
The Amish are there. I thought they were in Ohio for some reason.
I think there's kind of enclaves in a few, and then there's also Mennonites, which are very close to
Mennonite.
Very much like the Amish.
Okay.
But I think they're a little bit more amenable to modern conveniences. I know the Amish, they don't drive cars.
No, that's true. They're a weird bunch of people, the Amish.
It's always a trip. You're just motoring down the highway or whatever, and you see, Amish family, and they all dress the same, and the men usually have these beards, and the women wear really kind of not the most cutting edge of styles in terms of clothes, and they're just puttering around in a horse-drawn, wagon or carriage or whatever, and it's not something you see everywhere, that's for sure.
Did we discuss what your favorite state is and least favorite state?
Well, I'd have to say Kansas because, again, it's so flat.
Yeah, and, so Kansas is your least favorite state, only because it's so flat or because of the people as well?
Well, people are people. I mean, I've always said, a lot of people call the Midwest the flyover states because nobody goes there and that.
Yeah, true.
I don't like the Midwest, again, because it's flat and it's very humid. Not quite as bad as Florida.
Okay.
But, and it's a long ways from water.
So that's not good.
But I always say that if you're ever stranded on the side of the road, there's going to be somebody's going to pass you by, and they're going to help you get out of the ditch. That's how I.
So they're great. They're great people. It's just a pretty ugly or boring looking state.
Yeah, and I try to be wary of generalizations unless they increase my chances of getting laid, of course. But I think people are. I think people are people, and you're going to run across this. Do a cross section of any part of the country, any city. You're gonna get the same percentage of assholes. You're gonna get the same percentage of decent people. All kinds of stuff like that.
For sure. And so what's your favorite state? Did we say that?
Well, I'd have to say California because
Yeah, that's my favorite state.
I'm drawn to either nature or big cities, and California's got them both. I mean, you've got, the natural splendor, I guess you could call it. I mean, it's just you've got these two mountain ranges. The Sierra Nevadas go up the east side, and then the coastal ranges go up the west side. And you've got Lake Tahoe, you got Yosemite, you've got all these amazing places. You've got the highest altitude in the continental United States, Mount Whitney. You've got the lowest altitude, Death Valley. You've got deserts, you've got ocean, you got mountains. The problem is most people who drive in California, they are stuck on a terrible stretch, which is the I-5 through the Central Valley, which, if you just drive from LA to San Francisco and you take the I-5, you might think, wow, California is a horribly awful, boring state. But, you get off, the I-5 is kind of the zipper, I guess, that runs through the center of the state. And you get off at, 20 miles either direction, and, you're going to find plenty to see and plenty to do. And then, they got the big cities. I mean, you've got two world-class cities, LA and San Francisco, and arguably the best city is San Diego, Yeah,
San Diego's nice.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of shitholes, too. San Bernardino, which is kind of near where I'm at. Stockton, California. You drive into I like Pasadena.
No, Pasadena's all right.
Stockton, you roll into Stockton and you see billboards, and most cities, they're promoting some kind of tourist attraction or this or that. In Stockton, what I was struck by is the billboards are saying increased our response time by 5 seconds this year. Stockton Police Department. That kind of gives you an indication of that. But again, that's right on the I-5 as well. And Sacramento is not that great of a town, but I found another thing I really like is seeing the capital cities and the capital buildings of states. Yeah. And most capital cities in the United States are really bland. I guess maybe
what's the most blandest? Capital city.
Carson City, Nevada is pretty bad.
Yeah, because there's nothing to see, or
Jefferson. Well, there's gambling.
Okay.
Jefferson City, Missouri is pretty bland. Albany, New York. I think it's probably because they put the capital cities usually in the middle of the state just for logistical reasons back in the day.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, and you've got some. I mean, Austin is the capital city of Texas, and Austin is a veritable oasis in the middle of Texas. I mean, it's a very progressive, happening kind of town. So there are a couple of capital cities that are definitely worth seeing above and beyond the fact they're capitals, but there's a lot that aren't.
The capital.
In my humble but yet incredibly well-informed opinion.
What's the capital of California again?
Sacramento.
So you know how you've done your 50 states. Do you think you can recite all 50 states without looking at Google or your phone?
Yeah.
Go.
I think the key would be to do it in alphabetical order. You got Alabama, you got Alaska, you've got Connecticut, you've got Colorado, you've got Delaware, you've got FFF. No.
Wait, I should probably open up a screen on Google and make sure you're actually saying this all right.
All right, how about we do it this way? We'll start from the northwest. So find a map of the United States.
All right, hold on. I don't know why I read something somewhere once and it said there's 52 states, and then I looked again and then I saw that there's actually 50 states.
Yeah, there's 50, but you've also got the District of Columbia, which is where Washington, D.C. is, and Puerto Rico, which is what the hell is it? They pay income taxes. And
Puerto Rico. Is that
that's in and they can vote for president, but they're not citizens. It's weird.
And that's Puerto Rico's managed by the USA, in a way.
Yeah, but I'm not quite sure what the relationship is, but so do you have the map up?
Yep, got the map up. So let's go from the west coast all the way to the east coast.
So we got Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma. This is not a linear route. Oklahoma. What the fuck's above Oklahoma? Well, we can say Nebraska and Kansas.
Wait, you're going too quick for me. So did you say Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Montana,
Colorado, Wyoming,
New Mexico? Did you say that?
Texas. Yeah, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas and Nebraska, the Dakotas, South and North.
Yeah.
Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana. Then we'll just give her to the South. What was I? Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, if I didn't say it, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New York.
You didn't say Illinois so far.
Oh, I did not say Illinois. Okay. Well, I know it's a state. Let's go to the Northeast. We got Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland. I think I'm forgetting something up there.
Rhode Island.
The Carolinas. And I think that's all. Georgia, Florida.
Yeah, I think you've done it. Oh, you haven't done two. But these aren't in the main area.
Alaska, Hawaii, right?
Yes.
The harder part is the capital cities. I cannot get all those. I can come close, but
I'm not going to ask you about capital cities. But looking at that map, the place that intrigues me the most is probably Maine for some reason. Seems very intriguing. Something about
Maine's beautiful. It's not very populated. There's a lot of land that people don't live on, even though it's not the most remote or rugged. The coast is beautiful. They've got a great national park up in the northeast part. I think that's the easternmost part of the continental United States.
Yeah, they have
They have meese or moose, whatever. And I was not able to see a moose. I went to Maine in large part because I wanted to see a moose, and I stayed at a place, and they said, "Oh yeah, you got to get up at 3 a.m. and drive this way and that way." And I slept through it, so I never even gave it the college trouble.
You know why Maine is very interesting to me is because I'm a big Stephen King fan.
Yeah,
and I know he's written most of his books, around that area of Maine or certain areas.
Yeah, and
Maine.
I believe they have the cleanest water in the country. I think I remember reading that. It's a beautiful state. It's also kind of a lot of the communities are very affluent. That's where the Bush family was had their compound and sorts. But Paul Bunyan, I think, is from Maine, the legendary 98-foot tall lumberjack, who I don't think really existed in his Blue Ox Babe. But I think the big statue of Paul Bunyan is in the town where Stephen King was from, and I cannot remember what town that is.
I don't know either. I wouldn't have a clue which town that would be. I was going to say, I had had an idea of a question, but I've lost it now. Had something to do with one of these states because I'm looking at the map of America. One thing I must ask you though: have you ever noticed that Montana, if you're looking at the state of America, it looks like someone's face on the side?
I have not noticed that.
Yeah, it looks like a nose, a mouth, a head. That's very weird.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I think you had sent me a list of topics that you might ask about, and one of them was something memorable that happened in each state, which would fucking take forever. 50 states.
That would take a long time.
There's only 3 states that I don't have when I say I've been to all 50 states, I mean I've driving through the state doesn't count. The airport doesn't count. You got to spend a little bit of time, either have a beer or stay overnight or whatever. And I've got distinct memories of all of them except for 3, Nebraska, which I know I have driven through many, many times.
Nebraska, where's that? I'm looking at
Nebraska, stuck right in the middle of the country.
There it is.
Iowa,
so where
Missouri.
did you go from? Iowa to Wyoming or through Colorado to get through Nebraska? Where'd you come from?
It would have been one of my frequent trips to Missouri, where my parents lived.
So that's where your parents came from, Missouri area.
No, they decided to retire there. I don't know why.
Retired there.
Most people retire in Florida or
that's what I thought.
Palm Springs. Oh no, they retired because my brother was in the Air Force and he was stationed there.
That makes sense.
And my mom was from Ohio. My dad had breathing problems and probably extended his life for many years. But so Nebraska, I don't have a real strong memory or experience. Vermont is another one, and I know I've driven through Vermont because I did the whole Northeast a couple times. And the other one is probably the only state that I would say I really haven't been to is Rhode Island, even though I was physically there. But the only part of Rhode Island I've seen is a casino on tribal land right across the border from Massachusetts. And I went to a New England Patriots game, again, back in 1994. Cool. And after the game, we went to the casino. And so, I haven't been to Providence, the capital state, but Rhode Island's also the smallest state. But that is the one that I don't have a firm memory. But when you brought up about the face, my memory of New Hampshire, which is right next to Vermont, leaves change colors the fall. I went up again with my buddy Steve, my friend who were out constantly pushing each other's buttons and know how to get under each other's skin and all that. And we'd take a little hike to go see the old man of the mountain. And the old man of the mountain was a little mountain. I don't even know if it was a mountain, kind of a hill, but it had a face in the stone, which is all natural, but it had an uncanny resemblance to John F. Kennedy. It's called the Old Man of the Mountain. And we take this hike, and Steve is kind of just as grumpy as I am. And it's not that impressive. And we see this, and he just at the top of his lungs, and there's families around. He goes, "We walked all that fucking way for this." So that's my story on that.
So was it John F. Kennedy before he got shot?
Yeah.
Got
I don't think people thought it looked like. I mean, it had been there for centuries. It has since collapsed. I think it collapsed in 2002 or 2003, and I'm pretty sure it was the reverberations from my buddy Steve's proclamation that probably was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the last state in the continental United States that I saw was Delaware, which is a hard state to get to anyway, unless you're kind of in that area. And I actually did. Delaware is on the East Coast, about, I don't know, 50 miles maybe south of New York City. But
okay, it looks like it's below New Jersey.
Yeah, and
Pennsylvania.
So I go to the capital city. Well, no, before I got to the capital city, so I made a special trip because I drove from Warrensburg, Missouri, where my parents were from. My buddy Patrick flew in, and we drove to Georgia. Then he flew back because he had to be with his family because he's one of those breeders. And so I'm like, well, I have not seen South Carolina yet, and North Carolina just a little bit. I've never been to Delaware, so I'm gonna get the lower 48 out of the way. So drive up into Delaware, and I travel with a Donald Duck PEZ dispenser. Do you know what PEZ dispensers are?
PEZ are? Yeah, I do.
Well, before I get to Delaware, my mom collected a lot of things, and she collected PEZ dispensers. Okay. And the morning that I was heading to Europe for a bachelor party, I think the third time I've been to Europe, and I you travel a lot, I know that, but there's always a little bit of trepidation or anxiety. Do I have everything? Am I packed? Am I going to get mugged? Am I, are aliens going to whatever? And and I wait till the last minute. A lot of things. I'm running around my house. I'm a little nervous, and sitting in my living room was a Donald Duck PEZ dispenser. And I have no recollection of picking up this PEZ dispenser the night before. I'd been to some function, but no idea. And my mom had died a year before that. And this was the first big trip I took. So I took it as a sign from the universe. So now I travel with that Donald Duck PEZ dispenser. And usually wherever I go, I take pictures of it instead of selfies. It's always a Donald Duck PEZ dispenser. So anyway, so I crossed the Delaware state line. All right, great. I shit you not. 30 seconds after, a state trooper pulls me over for speeding, gives me a ticket, and I explain, hey, it's my last state. And he goes, well, you got a souvenir, But he was cool enough that I asked him if I could take a picture of him with my Donald Duck PEZ dispenser. So I have a picture of it.
That's nice.
Yeah, but that was the last state in the lower 48 that went to, and I paid for it.
Oh, you did pay for it. So in every state, have you got a picture of you with the PEZ?
No.
I think you've got to redo all the states.
Yeah, I've got them in most.
Yeah.
But there's a few, especially the Northeast, I think, that he has not yet traveled to. But he's a very well-traveled duck. Been all over this country, been to Alaska, been to Hawaii, been to Europe. So,
has he been to the Keys, the Florida Keys? Because I love the Florida Keys.
Yeah, that is the only thing in Florida that there is to love, I think. I do not like that state. Again, it's another very flat state, very humid.
Yeah, I don't like the state either, but I love the Keys.
Fort Lauderdale's nice. Miami, I could take it or leave it, but I really didn't give it much time. But yeah, the Keys are great. And Key Largo is awesome at the very end of it.
Yeah,
Problem is,
awesome.
You cannot. I did not feel comfortable drinking in Key Largo and then driving on that road because that the road with the between the islands, or I guess
the number one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a little harrowing. So if you can't drink, you can't have any fun. So I just turned around and left. No, it's No, it's I like the Keys. Definitely a different mindset down there.
Okay, so get this. So I drove 4 hours straight from Key Largo all the way to Miami Airport. 4 hours straight.
Nice.
And I was driving on the opposite side of the road to what I'm used to. I didn't take any breaks, and I think I had a few beers the night before.
Yeah, it's a little harrowing because you're only it seems like a few inches above the ocean. So
well, yeah, you are in a sense, and but it's pretty well protected. There's enough barriers there to keep you off on the bridge. Yeah,
I like that. The Everglades is a bit disappointing. I'm not quite sure.
They are a little bit disappointing, but I
remember. It's really in peril right now environmentally. And what ruined it for me also is that they one of the rangers was going out with a little metal basket because some asshole had left a cat out there to entertain the alligators.
Oh, yeah. Wow, yes.
So that was not cool.
Wow. Yeah, the Everglades is kind of cool. I did a what do you call it when you're on those the airboats?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I did that, and the fella who was driving the boat stopped a few times, got out to see, to shift the boat because it got stuck. And we thought he was going to get eaten by an alligator. And he said, oh, no, I've come close before, though. He's come close to being eaten by a large, I think they're saltwater, aren't they, alligators. So, yeah, it's very dangerous for him to get off the boat. But he was getting off and on the boat, and he didn't care at all. But he was a big fella too. There's
a few states down there, Louisiana and Florida really come to mind. They're really big on the swamp tours and all that. And if you really think about it, there is nowhere on the face of the fucking planet you would rather, you would least want to be than a swamp. It's, everybody does on the swamp tours and all that. It's kind of, it's reminiscent, I think, of UFC, the sport. Because I see UFC and all I see are guys with their heads trapped in another guy's crotch, and that doesn't seem like a sport to me. It's like a worse nightmare. So I think the swamps are kind of like that. I mean, could you imagine being lost in the swamp? I'd rather be lost in the desert, in the middle of Death Valley, than in a friggin' swamp. But
you'd probably have more chance of survival though in a swamp.
Well, you do have water. I don't know if you want to drink it, but as long as you can stay away from the boogers.
Pop it in a sock and drink the water.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed episode 1 of my chat with Joel. Be sure to listen to episode 2 that will be out in a few weeks' time. He explains why he left Hawaii till last, and it's quite touching. We also talk about a heap more other stuff as we ended up talking for near to 1 hour and 40 minutes, so it was quite a long chat, and I did want to separate it and not make it one whole episode. Also, remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm Travelman Podcast and Travelman Ben. Follow me on Facebook. I'm Travelman Podcast. I have a group and a page set up. I'm also on Twitter under Travelman Pod, and you can listen to my podcast on nearly every podcast platform and podcast app. So you can listen on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, And that's just to name a few of them. So thank you again, and be sure to listen to the next episode in a few weeks' time. Cheerio.